Hello everyone, I am back with more larger than Matt characters. If this is your first time coming across my channel, I love DIYs and I love crafting, especially with my Cricut. I love making SVG files specifically for larger than Matt projects. These files come sliced into pieces to fit a 12 by 24 mat, so all you would have to do is upload these files into Design Space, resize the image, and then cut. I 100% understand how intimidating larger than Matt projects can be, and with all the time invested and all the materials involved, you don't want to mess this up and waste all the time and material. So I hope my files will help make these types of projects easier on you. And towards the end of the video, I'm going to walk you through my steps on how I create and assemble my characters and offer some tips that I use during this process. The first characters I'm going to begin with are Mickey and Minnie. They both can be cut up to 40 inches. If you want them larger than that, you will have to make more modifications to the image to get it to fit your mat. They are both grouped together, so I'm going to ungroup them. And for now, I'm going to hide Minnie just so we can do Mickey first. I'm going to select the entire image and I'm going to change the height to 40 inches. Make sure to keep this lock on so it will automatically adjust the width. I'm going into my layers tab and I'm going to ungroup the entire image and then go through and make sure everything else is ungrouped, like this black layer needs to be ungrouped. So you'll notice a few exclamation points on these two pieces here, and just for now we're gonna hide them. But if I select make it, it does give me an error, so what we'll have to do is rotate these black pieces by 90 degrees. Basically, I'm telling Design Space how to fit these pieces on my mat. Again, I don't know why we have to do this, but that's just what we got to do to get this to cut. So let's go back and take a look at these two pieces with the exclamation points. I'm going to unhide one and I get an error when I hit make it. If you notice, it does say it's over 12 inches for the width and the maximum cutting width for the Cricut is 11.5. I'm going to upload a square and change the side to the maximum cutting size, which is 23.5 inches high and 11.5 inches wide. And I'm changing the color just so I can see it better. And I'm going to duplicate it just so I have a rectangle for each piece. I'm going to drag the pieces over the rectangles and align it onto the rectangles, just as if I were aligning these pieces on my actual mat. Starting with the face, I'm selecting the face and the rectangle and I'm going to hit slice. Now when I select his face, we have a new width of 11.4 inches. Now I could easily split his face in half to fit the mat without having to do all of this, but the whole point is less cuts and less lines. And especially on his face, I don't want any lines if we can avoid it. So same thing with this black piece, select the black piece and the rectangle and select slice. And now that we have our new width, we can select the remaining pieces over here and delete. And now we can move on to the cutting process. For Minnie, I'm going to select the entire image and increase the size to 40 inches with that lock on. Selecting the whole image, I'm going to ungroup, Then I'm going to ungroup other layers like this red and the black. And now this black piece here, it says it's 22 inches wide. So I'm just going to rotate this by 90 degrees. And this black piece here needs to be rotated by 90 degrees. And that is enough to move on to the cutting process. Next, I'm going to do Gracie's corner. I just uploaded her into Design Space, and I'm going to select the whole image and increase the height to 50 inches and make sure that lock is on. I'm going to ungroup the whole image, and then this black layer here needs to be ungrouped. There are two black pieces that are wider than 11.5 inches, but will fit on the mat if we turn it sideways. So we just need to rotate those pieces by 90 degrees, and then we can move on. Next is Elsa. Her maximum height is 45 inches. So I'm going to select the entire image and increase the height to 45. I'm going to ungroup this whole image, then look for any other layer that needs ungrouping, like this blue layer and the black layer. Now the only pieces we need to rotate is a blue piece here and this section of her hair, and I'm just rotating those by 90 degrees. Click Make It and we are good to continue. Up next we have Anna. She is also 45 inches tall. So I'm going to select the entire image and increase the height to 45. So same thing with the previous files. I'm going to ungroup the entire image, and I think there are no more layers that need ungrouping. So I'm going through and looking for pieces that show wider than 11.5 inches. So I'm going to select those pieces and just simply rotate by 90 degrees. That's just 3 black pieces and her face that needs to be rotated. The last two are Snoopy and Hello Kitty, and honestly these were the most challenging because I absolutely hate having to make cuts to a character's face. But with these characters there was no way around this. So I actually have 2 images for Snoopy. The first one that we are looking at does have cuts in his face, and the next one will not have any cuts through his face. So I'm going to select the entire image and increase the height to 35 inches. Ungroup the entire image and double check to make sure no other layer needs to be ungrouped. Then there are a few pieces that are too wide for our mat, so we just need to click each piece individually and rotate them by 90 degrees. And then we are able to continue to the cutting process. The second Snoopy design will be 35 inches wide. So select the entire image, and this time we're going to increase the width to 35 inches. And while you still have them selected, go ahead and ungroup. Notice that every file you use of mine, you will absolutely have to ungroup. And once all the pieces are ungrouped, we can actually just click make it, and continue. And lastly is Hello Kitty. After I've uploaded the file, I'm going to select the entire image and increase the height to 35 inches. Go ahead and ungroup the entire image. And actually, Design Space is allowing us to continue when I click Make It. In the previous files, we've had to rotate some parts by 90 degrees that were larger than 11.5 inches wide. So I'm not sure why we don't have to do that here. If it gives you any trouble after you've ungrouped everything, I would just suggest to go through and select every piece. And if they are wider than 11.5 inches, just rotate that by 90 degrees. Here is the cardstock that I use. It is 12 by 24 inches, perfect for this project. I bought this from Michael's on sale for about $15, which I thought was a great deal because you get 30 sheets. And they also have a pack with several colors. I bought this tan colored cardstock from Amazon. This is great for skin tones for most of the characters I've done. And don't worry if you don't have this sized cardstock, because I'll show you what I've done with 12 by 12 cardstock. When I make these large projects, I like to start off by cutting the bottom layer first, which is the black layer. I don't cut out any other color until this is done. One thing I want to point out is I am using the purple cutting mat only because it has lost its stickiness over time. Depending on the cardstock, you may want to use the blue mat, but just make sure that you are using the correct mat. Now, some of you have already seen this, but with large pieces like this, I like to peel the mat from the cardstock instead of peeling the cardstock from your mat. This helps keep the cardstock from warping and keeps the cardstock fairly flat, which helps tremendously when you are laying everything out. Once I have all my black pieces cut out, I'm going to lay them out and start putting my image back together. I flipped all these pieces over so we are actually looking at the back side of the image. I do this so I can easily apply the tape to the back side of the image. Also, always have your image available as a reference so you don't accidentally tape or glue the wrong pieces together. Now that I have my black layer completed, I'm going to continue cutting out the rest of the colors. And as soon as I get done cutting one piece, I'm removing it right away from the mat and placing it in the correct spot on top of my black layer. Here's another tip that I have to use often when I don't have 12 by 24 inch cardstock. I put down my first sheet on the mat and then my second sheet directly under the first, as close as I can. This cardstock is a double-sided, so what I like to do is mirror the pieces on this mat. So after it finished cutting, I can apply tape directly to my pieces before I peel them off the mat. Now that I'm done cutting one color, I'm going to move on to the next color. It helps me out a lot when I stay organized like this because the amount of pieces can be very overwhelming. Now that I have all my pieces laid out, it's time to glue everything down. Make sure while you're gluing things down, you are still checking to make sure the pieces are in their correct spot, because this is where I made a huge mistake later on. I always like to glue the bigger pieces first, and the smaller pieces just fall right into their place. Here is where I messed up. I'm gluing her hair down without ensuring that the pieces around it are in their correct spot. And this purple piece can't fit into its spot. And this is me not taking my time, and I'm rushing this part of the process. But you'll see later on in the video what I did to overcome this issue. But at this point, I am frustrated and I am just about over this whole project. So I'm going to move on to the other side and start gluing that. And I'm going to leave my mess up for another day. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this piece down around her hair. And once that's glued in place, I'm going to flip this over and just cut off the remaining purple with an X-Acto knife. This just goes to show we all make mistakes and it's not going to come out exactly perfect.